Have you ever noticed how some individuals seem to possess an almost supernatural level of control over the environment around them without uttering a single word? They don't shout, they don't plead, they simply step back, and suddenly everything shifts. The atmosphere changes. People begin to wonder, to pursue, to feel something deeper. Now imagine if you did the same. If instead of reacting instantly to everything, you chose silence over automatic replies, distance instead of emotional outbursts, what do you think would happen? That's exactly where the insight lies. The moment you stop being constantly available, emotionally, physically, psychologically, the world around you enters a kind of imbalance. Why? Because people grow accustomed to controlling you through your reactions, your impulses, your predictability. But the day you decide to withdraw consciously, the entire dynamic transforms. Those who believed they had you figured out suddenly realize they understand almost nothing about you. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves." Reflect on that for a moment. When you become less accessible, who starts to feel restless? Who becomes irritated? Who tries harder to provoke you just to get a reaction? This behavior reveals far more about them than it does about you. It exposes how much you may still be allowing yourself to be influenced without even noticing it. You keep giving, trying to please, maintaining harmony, holding on to people who deep down were never truly there for you. And with every forced agreement, every instant reply, every emotional reaction, you give away a portion of your energy. By the end of the day, what remains? Exhaustion, frustration, and an emptiness that feels difficult to explain. But there is a reason. You are too available for those who don't even deserve a fraction of your silence. This is not about turning away from the world completely. It is about choosing yourself. It is about what Jung described as individuation, the process of becoming whole, authentic, and complete. This journey begins the moment you understand that silence can hold more power than endless arguments, and that stepping back, when done with awareness rather than avoidance, is an act of strength. So consider this deeply. How long will you continue to be guided by the emotions of others? How long will you respond like a puppet each time someone presses your emotional triggers? Perhaps it is time to cut those invisible strings, to step back, to embrace a sense of mystery. Because when you stop being constantly available, everything begins to change. You have been conditioned to always be present, to respond quickly, to please others, to say yes even when every part of you wanted to refuse. Since childhood, you have been taught to believe that your worth is tied to how available you are. But here is a truth rarely spoken with clarity. This constant availability is not a virtue. It is a confinement. As long as you believe you must always be accessible, you will continue to be drained, manipulated, and forgotten the moment you are no longer useful. Being always available makes you predictable, and anything predictable becomes easy to use. People begin to treat you like an emotional switch, pressed when needed, ignored when not. You may not realize this because you are caught in the illusion that being there for everyone will guarantee someone will be there for you. But that is not how it works. Jung spoke about the persona, the mask we wear to gain acceptance and approval. This mask is what keeps you overly available. You say, "It's fine," when you feel overwhelmed. You respond instantly, even when you are mentally exhausted. You explain yourself, justify yourself, defend yourself, as though you owe the world something. But the reality is, the more you center yourself in others' lives, the more you disappear from your own. Constant availability is a subtle form of abandoning yourself. It is a disguised attempt to seek validation, avoid rejection, and manage how others perceive you. But this control comes at a cost, your peace. Your energy is not infinite, yet you distribute it as if it were. Those who expect you to always be available do not truly want you. They want what you provide: validation, companionship, distraction, emotional support. The moment you set boundaries, remain silent, or choose not to react, they become uncomfortable. They may call you distant or strange, but the truth is simple. You are no longer serving their expectations. And here lies a harsh reality. The more available you are, the less value people assign to you. What is always present becomes overlooked. What is easily given is rarely respected. So ask yourself honestly, who truly deserves your time, your attention, your presence? And perhaps more importantly, who deserves your absence? Before answering that, you must understand something deeper. Why do you react so quickly? Why do you give in so easily? What drives this automatic need to respond, to explain, to please? The answer lies in what Jung referred to as psychic energy. Jung did not view the human psyche as a simple machine reacting without consequence. He saw it as an energy system where every thought, feeling, and action consumes part of that energy. The real question is, are you deciding where your energy goes, or is the world deciding for you? Every impulsive reaction drains you. Every unnecessary defense, every pointless argument, every attempt to prove yourself, every effort to please those who don't appreciate you. It all consumes your inner strength. Jung emphasized that what you resist continues to persist. The more you react, the more you become entangled. People who feel constantly drained are not weak. They are misdirecting their energy. And exhaustion leads to vulnerability. When you are vulnerable, you become easier to manipulate. Those who seek to take advantage can sense it. They recognize that you react easily, that you try to fix everything, and they use it to their benefit. A balanced psyche, according to Jung, knows how to preserve its energy. This means saying no without guilt, remaining silent without fear, observing before acting. True strength is not found in reacting. It lies in choosing your response consciously. Think about how many times you've lost sleep over unresolved situations. How often you replay conversations in your mind, trying to figure out what you should have said. This is energy being spent without any return. You are feeding situations that should have already ended. Psychic energy functions like a protective field. When preserved, it creates presence. You walk into a space and command attention without effort. But when it is scattered, you become reactive, fragile, and overlooked. Start noticing your triggers. What situations make you react immediately? What causes you to lose your balance? These are the exact points where your energy escapes. This is where your awareness must grow, not to become cold, but to become selective and self-governed. One of Jung's most powerful insights is this: when you conserve your energy, you disrupt the projections others place on you. And this can make people uncomfortable because you are no longer playing the role they assigned to you. Many people believe they are in control of their reactions, but most responses are conditioned. Opportunistic individuals understand this. They don't need to be loud or aggressive. They simply trigger your patterns, and you respond exactly as expected. Jung described projection as the process where people assign their own unconscious traits onto others. But there is another dimension. While others project onto you, you also become the container for these projections. And unless you become aware, you will continue to carry what was never yours to begin with. And the more emotionally open you remain, the more you turn into a blank surface for these projections. You recognize that friend who only reaches out during moments of crisis, that partner who constantly relies on you to fix everything, that individual who praises you, but only as long as you serve their needs. None of this happens randomly. They are not connecting with your true self. They are interacting with an idea of you, with a role you have silently agreed to perform. And why do you accept this role? Because somewhere inside there is fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of not being loved, fear of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation rarely appears in loud arguments. It exists in the quiet weight of guilt. It shows up when you feel like you owe something to others, when you believe you must always be available, must always understand, must always give, even when it slowly breaks you inside. This is the central truth. A manipulator does not need to dominate you directly. They only need you to continue reacting in predictable ways. But the moment you stop reacting, everything shifts. When you begin to say no, when you answer with silence, when you withdraw instead of constantly explaining yourself, the entire illusion begins to fall apart. The projections people placed on you start to dissolve. The image they created of you collapses, and this makes people uneasy. Suddenly, they no longer recognize you. Even more unsettling, they are forced to confront themselves, and not everyone is prepared to face that reality. Your unavailability becomes threatening because it pushes others to confront the emptiness they have been avoiding. The silence you offer reflects the internal noise they do not want to hear. And then comes the backlash, criticism, emotional reactions, attempts to pull you back into the old pattern. Not because you are wrong, but because you have stopped serving as a convenient reflection for them. As Carl Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you withdraw and stop feeding the cycle, the shadow of others begins to surface. This can be unbearable for those who have always used you as an escape. But the real question is about you. Are you prepared to handle being misunderstood, rejected, or even criticized simply for protecting your peace? Are you willing to sit with the silence that follows separation? Because within that silence, a different kind of power begins to form. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. It is not dependent on validation or approval, and this is where the real transformation begins. The modern world is filled with noise. Everyone wants to be heard, to respond quickly, to win arguments that often have no real value, even at the cost of their own peace of mind. But there is a form of power that very few truly understand, and even fewer can master. It is the power of silence. Not passive silence, not fearful silence, but deliberate, aware, and controlled silence. This kind of silence is not emptiness. It is presence intensified. Jung viewed silence not as a void, but as fertile ground for internal growth. When you stop reacting, you begin to observe. And through observation, you start to notice patterns that were once invisible. Emotional cycles, manipulation tactics, and repeated self-sabotaging behaviors. Silence brings clarity, and clarity can be unsettling for those who rely on confusion to maintain control. Have you ever noticed how some people become uncomfortable when you do not respond? When you stop explaining yourself, when you simply step back? It is not always because they miss you. It is because your silence removes their ability to control the narrative. As long as you are speaking, you are still part of the game. But when you become silent, you change the entire structure. And this destabilizes anyone who depends on your reactions. True silence is not about losing your voice. It is about mastering your energy. It is about refusing to be pulled into emotional situations that do not serve you. Jung emphasized that individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires distance. Only in silence can you hear your own thoughts without interference. But silence is not without cost. It will distance you from those who only valued your usefulness. It will make you difficult to understand for those who only saw you through their own expectations. You may appear distant, cold, or even arrogant. But these reactions often come from people who never intended to understand your depth, only your function. The truth is, the more you grow, the more selective you become with your words. You begin to realize that every word carries energy, and not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Sometimes, silence is not withdrawal, it is sovereignty. It is the language of someone who no longer feels the need to justify their existence. Silence forces others to confront their own thoughts, their own internal discomfort. And that discomfort reveals more about them than any argument ever could. You do not need to explain your absence. It explains itself. Those who feel threatened by it reveal how dependent they were on your emotional availability. But the most powerful form of silence is not the one that unsettles others. It is the one that rebuilds you internally. It reconnects you to something deeper than external validation. In that internal space, free from constant demands, you begin to restore your energy. You reconnect with your essence. And this is where true transformation begins, not by eliminating noise alone, but by consciously deciding where your energy belongs. Understanding all of this intellectually is not enough if your actions remain unchanged. If you continue saying yes when you mean no, replying to messages that disturb your peace, engaging in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships out of habit, then awareness becomes just another form of self-deception. Real change begins when you make a firm decision to become selective. This requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability is not about being cold or indifferent. It is about no longer being accessible to everyone at all times for every reason. It begins with small shifts. Not replying instantly. Taking a breath before responding. Leaving conversations that drain you. Turning off your phone without guilt. Saying, "Not today. I'm not interested." Or, "I won't engage in this." The most important part is this. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your boundaries. You do not need to justify your silence. When you stop explaining yourself, you remove the control others had over your narrative. Jung understood that individuation often involves isolation. Not a painful isolation, but a sacred one. A period where you step back from external influence and learn to listen to yourself again. A time where your identity is no longer shaped by others, but built from within. If you want to measure your growth, observe who distances themselves when you become more reserved. Notice who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Pay attention to who claims you have changed when you finally begin to protect yourself. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of liberation. Being unavailable will feel uncomfortable at first. You may feel guilt. You may question yourself. Others may accuse you of being distant or harsh. But this discomfort is part of breaking old patterns. You have spent years placing yourself second. Change will naturally feel unfamiliar. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-respect. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you are saying yes to yourself. Every time you step away from toxicity, you reaffirm your worth. Not everyone will accept this version of you. Your absence may expose truths they are not ready to face. It may reveal how much they relied on your emotional availability. And this is when separation occurs. With separation comes pain, loneliness, and a sense of loss. But in reality, you are not losing, you are releasing. And what comes after that is something far more valuable. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to unfold. First, there is silence, an uncomfortable, almost overwhelming silence. You question your choices. You wonder if you made the right decision. But gradually, that silence transforms. It becomes calm, steady, and healing. Then comes solitude, not the loneliness of absence, but the fullness of your own presence. It is the solitude of someone who no longer abandons themselves to keep others close. In that space, clarity replaces confusion. Peace replaces anxiety. Strength replaces dependency. A new kind of stability forms, the strength of being complete within yourself. As Jung explained, individuation requires stepping away from the collective, letting go of the mask, and walking alone for a period of time. It is in that solitude that you truly begin to discover who you are, beneath everything that was never truly yours.